Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 3 NHBA podcast. I'm your host, Mitch Gould. This podcast brought to you by our sponsor, Purina. Find out what top nutrition can do for your hounds today. On this episode, we've got Mark Cascio from Purina. So enjoy. It's a great interview, guys. All right, folks. Got a big interview here today for you. Been talking a lot about Purina and their role as a sponsor here for the NHBA. We've got Mark Cascio, Senior Manager for Nestle Purina Pet Care. Welcome to the podcast, Mark.
Hey, thank you. It's good to be here.
Hey, now the last time you and I talked, you were in rabbit dog heaven. So just so our listeners know, you know what a rabbit hunt looks like.
Amen. I got on a really good one this year, so I was definitely blessed to do that, and I got to see what it was all about, and it was pretty awesome.
The Deep South has some rabbits, doesn't it?
We have some rabbits. I didn't bring enough shells with me. Let me just put it that way.
Well, you had me jealous, that's for sure.
Yeah.
So, guys, just to let our listeners know kind of what we're looking at today with Mark. Mark's going to take us through everything Purina, guys. And before we get into that, I just want to make sure that we thank Mark and Purina for their contribution. We just really appreciate everything you guys do at Purina, Mark.
Absolutely. Well, it's an honor, and it's a privilege, and we enjoy doing it. I'm very fortunate to have this job. I enjoy what I do.
You know, and I can tell our listeners also, not only are you guys and what you do to contribute, but just to work with you and I've told the story to a couple people, Mark, when we was getting set up for the Eliminator sponsorship. And I had called you and shoot, you were on vacation on a deer hunt. And I said, hey, buddy, I don't want to mess up your vacation. Go kill a big buck. We can get this dog food order. We can do this later. And you're like, oh, no. And you had your laptop out. And, man, we had that dog food not too long after.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I mean, it kind of goes hand in hand with this. I mean, we get a lot of time, and not very many people actually get to go and do what they love in life. And I'm able to go out and be in the field and work, but hang out and support a lot of people that have become really good friends now. So I enjoy it. And I don't mind at all, having a little fun, but also working when I'm having fun.
Absolutely. And I know in any and all of our conversation, I can just hear the passion in your voice for the sport and for hounds. And I think that's what makes it work so well, is you understand it, you get it.
Yeah, I'm very fortunate for sure. I'm very blessed.
All right. So this is, I want our listeners to hear, when you're competing at an NHBA event, when you're competing in that NHBA Youth Series sponsored by Purina, that NHBA sectional series, when you come to NHBA days, we're coming down to about 10 days. You're competing for the following, all provided to you by Purina. 67 large bags on the year. Total food for NHBA days, the sectional series. 12 18-pound bags to be awarded to class winners each day. 14 total jackets, guys. 14 total, those nice jackets you guys see that the NHBA presents to winners for youth and adult. That comes from Purina. You've got your 4 youth chaps and caps. Again, that's all part of this Purina package. And, I want a listener to hear that, and I think it's pretty special. So, all right, Mark. So just kind of tell me a little bit, let our listeners know, briefly explain, what's your role with Purina? Exactly, what do you do?
Well, okay, let me see where we can begin.
I know you do a lot.
Yeah. In the grand scheme of things, basically within this role, I have the privilege to offer support, whether it be financial, as well as nutrition education, to different sporting dog segments throughout, either their registries or affiliations or directly to the clubs who hold trials and field events pretty much throughout the U.S. and Canada. The support that we offer, it could be as simple as sending food or swag out to a youth event or a charity event. Sometimes it could be a little more intricate, such as hosting an awards race, tracking those dogs, tracking those points earned throughout that trial season, and then ultimately wrapping it all up into an awards banquet at the end of the year, honoring the overall hound and his handler. Mm-hmm. So that's pretty much what we do. We go out and we represent Purina in a positive light. And if we're out there and we can help somebody with nutrition and sponsor an event and keep this sport alive, that's what we enjoy doing.
Absolutely. And, I'm thinking as you were talking there, Mark, and this is something Purina's been at, supporting hounds and hunters for a long time. I can remember growing up as a coon hunter's son and my dad talking about the Purina race, who won the Purina race last year, and hey, let's run for the Purina point race this year, and yeah, that was a big deal when I was a kid.
Yeah, and it still is. It's a great event, and I think people look forward to it, and I know the clubs enjoy it because what it does is having that little bit of extra there, it actually increases those entries at those clubs, and it helps them raise money to do great things within in their local areas.
Absolutely. Okay, so what would you say? You're talking a lot about, all this stuff Purina is doing at clubs and local level, national level. What are some goals for sponsoring these events? What are some of Purina's goals?
Yeah, probably there are a lot of goals. There are a lot of objectives and things that we would like to achieve. But I'm going to probably say one of the most important, to me personally, would be, promoting our youth involvement and promoting the youth with, what I always say, the great outdoors. To me, there's nothing greater when I'm at an event and I watch a young man or a young lady and they finally discover their dog's ability and then they realize the impact they had on that success. It's amazing. And in the St. Louis Tower, our Purina headquarters, we quite frequently refer to that as a process of the human-animal bond. Mm-hmm. And like I said, you and I spoke about this last week, and without that youth's present and involvement in these future field events, it's just a matter of time before the interest of treeing a coon or running a rabbit with a beagle, that's going to be a lost art.
That's right. That's right. And it should be a concern, and it should be something on all of our minds, as houndsmen. And
absolutely.
I think anything we can do, to promote these kids and get them involved, make them feel welcome, and we got to do it. And we're just being attacked as houndsmen from all angles, and we're going to need these kids. We need that next generation.
I totally agree with that, Mitch.
Okay, so I can remember the transition, Purina as a company, and going from Purina Mills to Nestle Purina. So I'll just give you a chance to kind of explain that to some of our listeners and anything else about the company before we move on that you'd like to share.
Yeah. Okay. Ooh, let's see. I'll tell you a fun fact that not a lot of people know. A lot of people will look at probably one of the most widely recognized logos in the world is the checkerboard. You can go almost in any country, and when you see that, you're like, hey, that's Purina.
Oh, yeah.
And about that checkerboard, that checkerboard square was actually inspired from the memory of our founder, and that was Mr. William H. Danforth. He claimed that his mother would dress he and his siblings up in checkerboard clothing when they were young. And if they would go out to large gatherings, like whether it be a state fair or a family reunion, that would be an easy way for his mom to gather all her children up because they were all wearing that checkerboard clothing.
Oh, wow.
And from that memory, it just always stuck with him. And when it come time to come up with a logo for his company, he decided he wanted that checkerboard. So that's how that checkerboard pattern was, became a logo, if you will.
Wow.
And yeah. And in 1894, William Danforth established an animal feed company, and it was known as Purina Mills, like you mentioned earlier. Back then, that company was developed to feed mostly farm animals. They fed, they had feed for horses and rabbits and pigs. And then it quickly developed into dog and cat food. And then later on, exotic foods for monkeys and things like that. But in 1902, Purina Mill merged with the Ralston Cereal Company. And surprisingly, that cereal business became so successful that the company quickly became known as the Ralston Purina Company. Oh. And in roughly 80, and the reason I'm giving you this history is a lot of people get confused. They're like, are you Nestle Purina, Ralston Purina? I mean, what Purina are you? Purina Mills? So a lot of folks get confused with those transitions of the name changes over the years. But roughly 84 years later, around 1986, Ralston Purina was sold to, they sold Purina Mills, which was their animal feed business. And they sold it to a division of BP, British Petroleum Company, to one of their affiliates called Land O'Lakes.
Okay.
So 15 years later, in January of 2001, Ralston Purina was acquired by Land O'Lakes, or was sold by Land O'Lakes to Nestle Purina. And get this, it was sold for the sum of $10.3 billion.
Wow.
So one of the largest acquisitions of a pet food company ever. So Nestle bought Ralston Purina for Land O'Lakes for $10.3 billion, and we then became known as Nestle Purina Pet Care. And I'm proud to say that when that happened, we took the gavel, we ran with it. Today, Purina feeds roughly 47 million dogs and 68 million cats.
Holy smokes.
That's in the U.S. alone. We have over 9,000 employees, and 500 of those 9,000 are food scientists, veterinarians, and pet care experts.
500.
Yeah, 500 of those are professionals. And then we have 21 U.S. factories. And right now, because of, just the time that we're in and demands, we're in the process of adding 2 new factories. One will come on in Q4 of 23, and the other one is scheduled for Q2 of 25. And those are scheduled to provide over 900 new jobs, to the market.
Fantastic.
Yeah, those two expansions, from what I've heard, is a $2 billion investment by Purina. And what I'm real proud of is Nestle's our parent company, but our little U.S. company, Purina, we're now roughly giving back or providing the organization of Nestle back with 16.6% of their overall volume in sales.
Wow.
So I want to say Nestle's total sales volume in 2023 was like $102 billion, and that's Nestle worldwide. So U.S. Purina gave back 16% of that to that organization. So, man, that is a huge testament as to what's going on with that organization.
Absolutely. You said Nestle. Now, when I hear Nestle, I think of chocolate.
Yeah, that's right.
So can you explain a little bit about, to our listeners and to me, I guess, too, because I don't know the answer. What is Nestle's strategy? How does a chocolate company own a dog?
Yeah, great question. So Nestle is a food company, and they're based out of Vevey, Switzerland, and they're the largest food company in the world. So they have ownership into Haagen-Dazs and Ben & Jerry's and Stouffer's and Lean Cuisines and lots of different companies. And one thing that they have, along with chocolate, they own Gerber Baby Foods, and they own Carnation Infant Formula. So what they found through owning and operating those companies, they were able, through research, to develop and discover like a lot of cutting edge nutrition and medical knowledge. A lot of that nutrition and medical knowledge that they discovered could be integrated over into pet food. So it made perfect sense for Nestle to purchase, one of the largest pet food companies in the world to quickly begin innovating those ideas and innovations into pet food and food for pets.
Basically, nutrition is nutrition. Right.
Exactly right. And then I'm not sure if you're familiar with Purina's Fortiflora, which is a probiotic.
Oh yeah, I've used it for a long time.
Okay, well that formula came out of the pharmaceutical side of Nestle, and that was integrated and moved over into pet food, along with some other developments. On we have a therapeutic prescription side of the diet industry that's sold directly to veterinarians, and one of those is called Purina HA, and it's a hypoallergenic diet for dogs that are allergic to certain protein sources. They've altered the molecular weight of that protein molecule, and that science came from Nestle. So I think it was a great marriage. I didn't see it in the beginning, but now that I look back, it was a great union of, two companies.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's, man, what a neat deal there. I can't say that I knew any of that.
Yeah. Yep.
Wow. So now we're going to transition here a little bit and get into the meaty stuff. And one thing I've always respected about you, Mark, is you're the furthest thing from a used car salesman that I've ever met. I mean, you don't beat a drum and say, "Oh, you do this and do this, guys." You really let Purina speak for itself. And I'm excited to get into this next part here about the actual products.
Well, thank you for saying that. I really appreciate that. And it's so easy when you work for a company that has some stature and behind it. So you let the products speak for themselves. And I'm just blessed to have this job.
Absolutely. So let's just get into the products, Mark. So tell us about Purina Pro Plan, specifically Purina Pro Plan products.
A lot of folks kind of think that Purina Pro Plan is just one SKU. And we've got over 200 SKUs in the Pro Plan portfolio, if you will. So I do get asked quite a bit, hey, tell me about Pro Plan, or, should I feed Pro Plan? And the beautiful thing about having so many different SKUs is if your dog has a food allergy, we're going to have a Pro Plan SKU number that's going to meet that dog's problem. If they've got a skin problem, or let's say your dog is allergic to chicken, we're going to have a salmon product within the Pro Plan portfolio that's going to address your dog. But that's not really a short conversation. What I have learned is that most people assume that their dogs. Excuse me for a second, Mitch. Most people assume that dogs are carnivores, and in fact, a dog is an omnivore. And what that means is they require both plant and meat to thrive, and most importantly, to meet all their nutritional requirements. The simple answer is when providing a Pro Plan product to your pet, it provides the unique opportunity to feed your hound a complete and balanced diet produced, by a trusted company who's been making pet food for 129 years. I think that's first and foremost super important. Mm-hmm. In fact, if you look at that history and you look at that trust and want to feed, a product from a trusted company, I'll brag just a little bit, and I try not to do that a whole lot, but the actual kibble, the dog food kibble, was actually invented by Purina. And I'll tell you the importance of that claim. Prior to a kibble being produced for a pet, dogs ate in the wild, and their life expectancy in the wild was 5 to 7 years. And when Purina invented the extruder, in the era of the kibble, when the kibble was born, that changed overnight, that dog's life expectancy, and it almost doubled. And nowadays we have dogs living on into 17, 18, 20 years old just by kibble alone. So the extrusion process, allowed us to be able to pressurize the nutrients that pets needed, to meet and exceed their daily nutritional requirements. And we put that into a palatable kibble that they would eat, enjoy, and then now we'd have the nutrition in them that we wanted in them. And all of that is, composed of a unique blend of your protein, your fat, your carbs, your fiber, and other important nutrients that, that make Pro Plan a trusted diet to feed your pets.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's right. And, I think you spoke about, that was revolutionary in that era of being able to have an actual kibble. And I've read some of those stories of some of your houndsmen that you see these cool black and white pictures of at the turn of the century, and they never talked about old dogs in those stories because I don't think there was any.
No, not really.
And you mentioned that about and me and you've had these conversations before. We should have probably hit the record button. Me and you we both kind of geek out on dog nutrition.
Sure.
But, you mentioned that about omnivores, and I've always found it to be a little bit off when I hear folks try to compare these bagel dogs or coon dogs or whatever to wolves. And they'll say, oh, meat, they eat meat in the wild. You don't need any of this other stuff. And that's just, dogs, and I'll let you speak to this, over centuries of being domesticated, they are omnivores. They're not a wolf.
Yeah. Yeah. What happens too is these dogs have to have a fiber. Fiber does a lot, and I'll speak to this a little later on. But the important thing about fiber is fiber helps out with the water absorption, which helps out with a really good firm stool, bowel movement, things like that, so these dogs don't struggle. But also that fiber source is a really unique nutrition source for the normal bacteria in their body. So within their GI tract, that bacteria that's there, it needs to be healthy. And the way that it's healthy, it needs plant material. It needs fiber. And that's how it nourishes itself. And by meeting all of their needs, you just have a well-balanced, healthy pet.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So you mentioned some of the products. If somebody were to say to you tomorrow, they said, hey, Mark, I'm going to switch to ProPlan.
Okay.
What would someone expect to see in their dog if they decide, hey, I'm gonna feed ProPlan? What should they expect?
Woo, man, where do I begin? A lot of times when someone changes their pet over on a food, they don't actually see the benefits right away. The dog feels them right away, but for you as the owner to look at your pet and try to pick up within a few days, hey, is this working for him or not? It's going to be really hard, to the eye. Probably first, I'd say the coat. You want to look at the coat. I can go to a lot of trials and I can feel a dog's coat and I can just tell you if they're on a not so great diet. The coat is really rough. It's really brittle. If you have a dog that's on a really good quality feed, such as ProPlan, that has a high level of omega-3 fatty acids. And what I mean by that is you can source out omega-3s from a lot of different sources, but what you really want is you want an omega-3 fatty acid that is produced and supplied, from a real fish source, whether it be salmon or trout or cold water fish. You'd rather that be a source from fish as opposed to a grain such as flaxseed oil. You're going to find that small animals really do well on fish oil and fish as opposed to a grain oil. So you can see that a lot of times in their coat, where the coat feels really slick and nice. The other thing too is a lot of that omega-3s that they help fight off inflammation in the joints. So by using real fish, and I don't want to get too crazy technical because you and I like this stuff, with other people probably cut us off, but real omega-3s will go in and fight a production of a bad inflammation factor that I'm trying to get away from scientific terms that you don't want to be in the joint, and it'll stop that production of a bad prostaglandin that's associated with pain and inflammation. And the omega-3s will actually go in and cool that down and start healing of those joints where that inflammation is. So that's the first thing. Second, I would say that perfect blend of protein to fat. It always provides an extremely really good body condition, a lean muscle mass with very little waste or pickup. By using certain types of fat, like a MCT, which stands for a medium chain triglyceride, in the pet food, those are fat molecules that are partially digested. They're already digested to some degree and broken down, and that's easy on the animal system for them to break it down. Absolutely. There's a lot of new research. And I'll be honest with you, one great source of that is coconut oil. We're seeing that a lot in humans as well. Mm-hmm. And what we show is that with that medium chain fat, a dog's liver will convert that medium fat into a ketone. And what that ketone will do, it's been proven to go in and speed the glucose back up the levels in the brain. So that will help out with the improved alertness, the quickness, decision-making, and ability that you might need to see in your dog in a trial or in a field. Also, overall trainability. So what I like is ingredients that have dual roles. It's not only a fat, but it also has a huge hand in helping out with, like I said, that mental aptitude. And it probably last is less stools. By using, like I said earlier, that unique blend of soluble and insoluble fibers, we can control that water absorption and ultimately kind of assisting in that dog having firmer stools. That fiber source, again, like I said earlier, is an excellent source of nutrition for nourishing the bacteria in that dog's GI tract, which ultimately helps, with a healthier and more stable balance of their microflora.
Now, you mentioned absorption there a little bit ago, Mark, and talking about, it really kind of a term maybe our listeners are used to hearing is fat soluble. That a lot of these nutrients, that's where that fat plays such an important role. Also, though, water absorption.
Mm-hmm.
And I know me and you had a long conversation about this the other day, and I want to get this out to our listeners. I think it's so vital. I see so many dogs, Mark, and I know you do too, at these field trials, and I can look at the dog, look at their eyes, their coat. They're dehydrated. They're
Mm-hmm.
not. They are not a hydrated animal.
That's right.
So I wanted to talk to you a little bit. What do you think about that topic, and also a conversation you see a lot on social media. How important is it to water bait feed? What's your thoughts on that?
Great questions. Dry dog food takes a lot longer to digest. I personally feel it's important to add water to the feed. Not everybody's a fan of that, but I believe in extra hydration. That the process of adding water or water baiting adds hydration back to the dog's system. An ideal situation would be to have dogs, eat as soon as the food is, let's say if you have the food in a dish, you add water to it. You want, as soon as that kibble begins to float, that's the ideal situation of when you'd want that dog to actually eat that feed. And usually after a dog is eaten without water, 2 hours later, you'll notice an increase in thirst. Mm-hmm. By adding water to that kibble prior to them eating it, we don't really see that increased thirst, much later in the evening on dogs that have the water added to the diet. So that's one really cool thing. Also, I've had people that I've watched, feed their dogs, and what they'll do is they'll add way too much water. And that kibble becomes real soft, or let it set too long, it becomes real mushy. And you don't want that either, because that'll actually do more damage than good. What that will do is lead to kind of a faster digestion of that kibble. Mm-hmm. And then as far as regarding to feed times, I think you'd asked me that on our last conversation, if there was maybe any, any thoughts on maybe
the feeding windows.
Yeah, feeding windows. That's right.
During the trial, leading up to trial, those kind of things.
That's correct. So regarding feeding trials, we have a veterinarian that works for us that lives in Nome, Alaska, and he does the Iditarod, Dr. Arlie Reynolds. I don't know if you have ever heard of him, but
Absolutely. I've seen him some of his videos. Awesome. And, awesome guy.
Well, he put out a study that showed that peak performance normally occurs 24 hours after a hound is eaten. So, if you're feeding once a day in the evening times, I would say maybe continue on that regimen. But you can feed a bit earlier the day before if you're trialing this dog. But you got to be careful with that too, because if you run that dog and then you try to feed that dog early because you're going to go to a trial the next day, it's super important to allow that dog to cool down before you feed that dog.
Better believe it.
Blood flow. Blood flow is needed for that dog to cool down, but also blood is sent down to the digestive tract to help that dog digest the food. So for optimum digestion, allow that dog to cool down before you feed that dog.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting you mentioned Dr. Reynolds there. I mean, he is the reason, me personally and some of my close friends that I trial with can tell you this. I'm a real stickler when I'm preparing for a trial. I will get that dog regimented to where round one, that dog is almost 24 hours to the minute since its last meal.
Wow. Okay.
and I can tell you right now that I have yet to see a dog, and however many years ago that's been that I read that, where he had written that, that didn't respond to that.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not sitting there saying it's some magic wand. But
sure.
It does. It's hard to explain. The dog just has a a little bit more go. I've read some things where it's linked a little bit to blood sugar and what triggers dogs and canines to be more active. And I can what you're saying there. I've definitely seen that, and yeah, I think his stuff is really cool to read, and definitely a leader in nutrition for canines for a long, long time.
Yeah, yeah, he lives, he has a lot of sled dogs and he lives with his dogs at that research facility. So, somebody that's spending a lot of time with their dogs and their pets and they watch them and they stand there and they watch them as they eat. I mean, they know exactly what's going on with their pets.
Now you get into the trial and you win your first round. Obviously, you can't make a 24-hour, there's
That's
not
right.
much you can do there because you're going to end up running the following morning or that evening. So you can't quite stay in that 24-hour window. But
Yeah.
what I always, and let me ask you what you think of this, because, as soon as the dog cools down, comes back to what I call baseline temperature and they're not panting, they're like you're talking about the blood in their system. I like to go ahead and get my dog fed, that way it's as much time gap between point A and point B as can be.
I totally agree with that.
You agree with that?
Yeah, absolutely. 100%.
So, that's something I think I see guys, they'll come out around 1, they won their cast. They'll wait until 8, 9 o'clock, 7 o'clock that evening to feed. Well, guys, that dog's going to run here in about 9 hours,
Yeah.
And, so that's all good stuff, man. Real good stuff. So anything else, Mark, on water or hydration or anything like that before we move on here?
No, it's good to keep a dog hydrated. What we found is a lot of times, and you're seeing it more often now, is back in the day when it come to regarding struvite and oxalate and kidney stones and things like that, humans, got that more so than your pet would. But now we're seeing a lot of that in pets. So we show that a lot of water is important to keep the dog hydrated, because what happens is a lot of times these dogs will have crystals in their urine. And if there's not a lot of fluid there, these crystals will bump into one another and they'll form a stone. But if you can keep that dog hydrated, a lot of those crystals are, in a solution, and they'll expel those crystals in their urine before they can bump into one another and form a stone. So being hydrated has a lot of really good benefits to that animal.
It goes right into not just, performance, but health, like you're saying.
Health.
So,
That's exactly right.
absolutely. All right. So let's talk a little bit, Mark. All of us houndsmen, or not even just houndsmen, dog owners, we see the news and social media, and this dog food's on a recall.
Yeah.
This dog food's on this recall. And, we're all afraid of that and cognizant of that. So, how much should we worry about pet food recalls?
Oh, man, that's a great question. Mitch, typically not much at all. There are a lot of really good pet food companies out there. Most of the pet food companies today that are out there pretty much will model their diets according to AAFCO standards. Mm-hmm. And AAFCO is an acronym for the Association of Animal Feed Control Officials. These guys for 110 years have been publishing, doing reports on what it takes to make a complete and balanced diet. They study levels of sodium so you don't put too much sodium in a diet. And as long as a pet food company is adhering to those standards that are published by AAFCO on complete and balanced diets, you shouldn't have any problems at all. If you do see an alarming claim that someone's made on Facebook or social media, something like that, because those are out there, I would recommend you going, whether it be Purina or someone else, go to that company's website. I can tell you, like with Purina, when you're feeding millions and millions of dogs, if there's going to be any kind of recall or an issue with a food, they're going to know about it. It's not going to affect just one dog in Kentucky. It's going to affect many, many dogs all over the U.S. So I would recommend going to that company's website, checking, seeing if there's any recalls that were announced. But again, if the company's, producing diets based on those standards, it's very seldom, very rare that you'll ever see a recall of a product. Most of the time, any of the recalls that you see are voluntary recalls, and they're almost always minor and non-life threatening. Sometimes I've seen recalls in the past for, when the kibbles are coming across a conveyor belt and there's a boom like on a tractor and it sprays palatability enhancers, coatings on the kibble. Well, if you get too much on one side and it gets gummy or whatever, it may spray a little extra on the other side. And so they'll recall it for things like that, but hardly ever is it life-threatening, recalls.
Okay.
For Purina customers, again, if you see stuff on the internet, I'd encourage them to log on to, www.purina.com and just look for the latest updates.
Go to the source.
Absolutely.
Social media is good for some things and not so good for others, right? So
yeah, it can be.
Okay. So if someone wants to research and they said, you know what, I want to research and begin feeding a Purina product, Purina Pro Plan product, or any product, I guess you would say, how do they get started? What do you recommend they do?
Just like I mentioned earlier, log on to the website, www.purina.com. From there, they can go in and find information on many topics. There's articles there on how to choose the right pet food for your pet. There's breeder information on people that want to breed and feed puppies. It gives you information on how to order like puppy kits and things like that. There's even a calculator on there that will tell you how much to feed your pet. So if you have a pet and you don't know how much to feed them, you don't overfeed them, you want to make sure they get the correct amount of calories, you can find all of that on that website. That's a great source of information, and it's really easy to move around and find what you need there.
Okay, so there you hear it, guys. That you go to that website, and that's a great resource for you to get started. So, Mark, you mentioned, the support, earlier in the podcast here, the support Purina has for various organizations, club level, local, national level, different things. So I want to have an opportunity here for you to talk a little bit about, what organizations is Purina supporting currently, and how would our listeners be able to learn more about, some of those?
Okay. Absolutely. So, I mainly talk about the hound division because that's kind of where I hang my hat at. But within the breeder enthusiast group of Purina, we have a lot of different segments. We have the bird dog segment, the retriever segment, the herding dog segments. We have the conformation segment. So we have a lot of different segments. But locally within the breeder enthusiast group, we support organizations like you mentioned earlier, the NHBA. That includes a lot of different youth programs, philanthropy events across the U.S., fundraisers, things of that nature. Just roughly in the beagle world, we sponsor over 300 beagle trials annually. And now those cross over from different registries to include specialized Purina awards for, overall outstanding hound in both beagle and coonhound segments of the year. We try to give back to our end user. Our end user is going to be the person that buys our food. We donate to the PPCP program. That's a program that's designed to reward the Purina feeder as well as their affiliates of their breed groups they're members of, as when they redeem receipts for purchasing the food, they'll get credit back for redeeming those receipts. Nationally, Purina sponsors a ton of groups, tries to help out where they can. Groups such as Pet Finder, that's a pet adoption service that, helps find pets for shelters and from shelters and companions all over the U.S. That's petfinder.com. We have a group called Purple Leash Project, which is really impressive. I like it a lot. It's a group that's created to help out with, people that are in shelters from domestic violence, to provide pets in those situations to help out with healing. We have another organization. I'm sorry, Mitch, were you saying something?
I'm sorry. I said that's really cool.
It's really cool. I'm a veteran as well, and we have a program called Pets and Veterans, and that's pairing, trained service dogs to aid veterans that, suffer from PTSD and things like that. There's tons that we have, pets and patients where we unite pets and families in hospitals. The main thing probably that really means a lot to me is disaster relief. I have never seen, being in Louisiana where we have a lot of hurricanes, I can't tell you, I can remember back for Katrina where Purina called me and said, "Hey, are you okay?" And I said, "Yes, sir, I'm doing good, but my community's not well." And they said, "What do you need?" And I can remember them back in an 18-wheeler, into my cul-de-sac and me unloading 27 pallets of feed and taking it to humane societies and shelters and vet clinics all around the area. And that just gives you a strong sense of pride when your company's right there behind you. So I love the fact that they fund pet food and litter to communities that are in need. So those are some national things that Purina does.
That's really cool, Mark. I actually didn't know that.
Yep.
That's really cool. So you mentioned the PPCP.
Mm-hmm.
So, let's talk about that a little bit and what that benefit would be, to our houndsmen and, also to their parent breed group. It can be rewarded financially.
Yeah, so our food is sold through distribution. So a lot of times we have distributors that will, buy our food and they'll resell it. And we don't really know who they sold the food to. So it doesn't give us an opportunity to meet our customers, to hear our customers' needs, to find out, how we can better serve our customers. So we started, the Pro Club. And what Pro Club allowed us to do is to be able to give back like a rewards program that we give back to people that are our customers that are buying our products. And what we found is a lot of the people that are buying our products that are in the sporting dog world, they found out about us or about our products through their breed group. There was somebody in their breed group that, that fed our product or there was a donation made to the breed group and they spoke up at a meeting and said, hey, take care of our customers or take care of our vendors, if you will. So we wanted to give back to the breed group. So we started the Pro Club, and that allowed us to have a link to be able to find out who our end user was. And also within that Pro Club, when we have a end user or customer that's able to turn in their receipt to get that reward, we want to give a little bit back to the organization that referred them to us. And that's going to be most of the time their breed group. And that's kind of how that works. So anybody that's interested in learning more about that, probably the best way to do that would be to go to PurinaProClub.com.
Okay.
Or they can dial, the 1-800 number. I actually think it's a 177 Pro Club number. And that's open from like 7 to 5 Monday through Friday. They can speak to a live person. I'll probably get killed for this. If anybody knows Dave McVeigh or Mike Lucetta, they can call them on their cell phones. They have the ability to sign them up over the telephone. And when that person is signed up, they'll get a little membership card in the mail. And anytime they buy any feed, they can save their receipt and they can turn that in through the app, through the website. And then Purina will actually give them back a certain percentage on pounds. I think right now, the Pro Club redemption on a 50-pound bag of Pro Plan Performance is 19 cents a pound back as a, thank you for buying the product. So I think that's super cool because a 50-pound bag rebate is $9.50 back.
Oh, wow.
And then on top of that, if anyone within the Pro Club, or let's say for NHBA members, if they want to go in, if they're already Pro Club members, they can go in and they can attach themselves to a breed group. And when they do that, we'll give a percentage of their redemptions to that breed group annually in a check.
Okay. Gotcha. So that's, you guys just reiterate that, Mark said $10 off a bag. That's pretty daggone significant on a 50-pound bag of dog food. So
yeah, I think the 19 cents a pound back on the Pro Plan is a fairly substantial amount. And the reason we had to do it like that, Mitch, is because what happens is if we were to discount that at our distributor level, they would never pass that on to the end user. So our customers would never see that rebate. So that's the reason we have to go through. And you probably remember the old days when we had the weight circle.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people were upset about that thing going away, but we had to be careful with that because a lot of those would come up missing in the grocery stores.
Yeah, that's right. Folks, I and Mark, I've been asked over the years, well, what's it take to win a big hunt? A new guy getting into the sport, or what do I need to do? And generally, people, you see how hard they run their dogs,
Yeah.
And they're trying to find the right dog. I think there's multiple parts to being able to win a big event or win a point chase. Obviously you need enough dog. The dog needs trained properly. Health and nutrition, and a little luck don't hurt, right? So,
that's right.
I'm a big believer in everything I do in life. Let's focus on what we can control. I can't control the luck. I can help control some other factors. And I feel like, health and nutrition is some things over the years that houndsmen we've kind of skimmed on a little bit. And, the health part, we're going to do some stuff this summer, have some experts in to talk about, things like tick and flea preventative and Lyme disease. And we're going to kind of go into that this summer and have some experts on the podcast to go into that. But this nutrition piece we're talking about today, not only does it support the dog's health, but guys, if you're putting all that time into your dog and you're not feeding a quality dog food, I mean, it's really a shame, Mark. And you don't see that as much as you used to, but I know some guys, they just try to skimp on dog food, and man, they're putting their dog at a disadvantage.
Well, Mitch, I see a little bit about, what you're talking about, and I certainly understand it because I have friends that own kennels that have 80 to 100 dogs at their kennel, and I realize that, hey, they don't have just an unlimited, a blank checkbook that they can go out and spend a ton of money. So what I would like people to know is that look at the complete Purina portfolio, whether it be Purina Dog Chow or Pro Plant Performance or Purina One, all of those are excellent quality feeds. Mm-hmm. Some like at a car dealership, you're going to have some that'll have a few more bells and whistles than others. But at the end of the day, those are excellent quality feeds. If we have a rail cart that comes into St. Louis with, corn on it or chicken or something like that, when we buy that, we buy in quantity. It doesn't just go into our, super premium diet. It goes into all of our diets. Mm-hmm. So I definitely would encourage folks to, look at the complete portfolio. Again, if they have any questions at all, they can reach out to me. They can reach out to our field consultants, whether it be Mike or Dave or those guys, or dial our 1-800 number or log on to our website. Anything we can do. We're at most of these trials, NHBA days, and so feel free to come up and ask us questions, approach us, come to the table. We'll be happy to help out any way we can.
And those guys are super good dudes too. And
absolutely,
I've known Dave for 2 decades or better now. And
yep.
Don't worry, Dave. I'm not going to let Mark put your number out here on the podcast. So, but
oh man, that was next.
And I should mention, Mark, just another example what Purina does for the NHBA and our clubs. Dave was kind enough to, and we're talking about Dave McVeigh, who's a consultant, I believe. Is that the right term?
Yep.
He comes to our eliminator. He's there all weekend with us. He brings these beautiful backdrops. I wanted to have these pictures. I want to have some nice pictures at our eliminator. And here he comes, has got the whole setup for us. And we just appreciated that so much. I want to give a shout out to Dave for that. He was a big help.
Absolutely. Yeah, those are really nice. I wasn't sure if Dave had those with him, and when I saw that, I just kind of smiled and said, really nice. So Dave does an amazing job. Very fortunate to have Dave as part of the team for sure.
And I believe in attention to detail. I think people appreciate the little things. Mm-hmm. And, I think that was just one more thing that made the event special. And so we want to definitely thank Dave for that.
Sure.
But, so guys, Mark, this has been an awesome interview, and I appreciate you so much coming on and sitting down with me.
Absolutely. Thank you for doing this. I appreciate it. I enjoyed it. I look forward to hearing more of these. And man, I think I see the value in this, and you do such a great job. And I thank you for the opportunity and the platform.
Oh, thank you for the kind words.
Sure.
So guys, folks, get out there, check out this Purina.com. Try a bag of Pro Plan. You won't be disappointed, guys. Mark has gave you some wonderful information here. As I said, Mark is, he lets this product sell itself, and it's not hard to do. So get out there, check that out. Any questions, as he said, you can get in touch with a consultant. And, they're at a lot of events. Don't be afraid to go up and talk to them. And, I know you won't be disappointed in the result. So, Mark, on behalf of NHBA, thank you so much for everything you do, buddy. And we'll be seeing you soon.
Absolutely, Mitch. Thank you very much.
Well, folks, that's going to conclude episode 3. I want to personally thank Mark Cascio from Purina for spending some time with us on this podcast. But I also want to thank each and every one of you that have downloaded and subscribed to the podcast. It's growing, and it's because of your help, guys. And we appreciate each and every one of you tuning in and listening. I hope you're all enjoying it. Guys, next episode here will be coming out soon, so be looking for episode 4. We're going to preview recap your 2023 NHBA days and preview your 2023 UKC Nationals. So again, we thank you. Appreciate y'all listening, and y'all have a blessed day.